This would be my encouragement to pastors. Don't worry about winning. Don't worry about approval ratings. Don't worry about success. Don't worry about legacy. Worry about anointing.
Joining me today is Pastor Mark Driscoll, a voice many know for his no-nonsense preaching and fearless approach to cultural issues. We're talking about faith, masculinity, and what it means to build a strong church in a time of compromise. Get ready. This one is real, raw, and relevant. Here we go. Mark Driscoll, welcome to Strong Church. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, glad to be here, buddy.
You know, we call the show Strong Church with Lucas Miles, and when I think about a strong church and a strong pastor, you're one of the first names that I think of. You've embodied that very, very well over the years, and I think as I've had a chance to get to know you, I've been out to your church with Charlie, I've been able to see how you minister, and I think that you really do a great job balancing that grace and truth component. And how and exhibiting, I think, a biblical strength and a biblical manhood. How much of that has been something that's just maybe who you are versus you've had to process over the years to, really formulate where you stand and present on that?
Well, I think we're all a product of our upbringing, and so for me, my grandpa was a diesel mechanic. My dad was a union drywaller. I grew up in a union laborer's home, and I was the oldest of 5 kids. One of my first jobs, I lied about my age, falsified my birth certificate, and I joined the Longshoremen's Union. And so, I don't come from evangelicalism. I don't come from the purity ring, homeschool subculture. I don't come from that. And so for me, that's just kind of who I am and how I was raised. I got saved at 19 in college. First man in my family to ever go to college.
Wow.
And I was just reading the Bible, got saved reading the Bible, and went to my first men's retreat. A couple months later, God spoke to me audibly. I didn't know he did that. I grew up Jack Catholic. I didn't know anything. And I was sleeping with the pastor's daughter at the time. So I'm this close to getting it right. And God said, Mary Grace, preach the Bible, train men and plant churches. And then he said, I've called you out from among many to lead men. And I was 19. I didn't even know what that meant. So I went to my pastor. I was like, does God still talk to people? And here's what I think he told me to do. He's like, you better do that. So fast forward 35 years, that's what I've been doing.
Very Samuel moment there.
I'm staying in my lane unless I hear otherwise.
Yeah.
So faithfully married to my wife, more than 30 years. This is my 30th year in the pulpit as a senior pastor. I'm in my 40th book of the Bible. I'm just staying in my lane, doing my thing.
Look, we've seen, I think, even this last year, there's been, things that have, with pastors where we've seen, just guys fall, guys that
giants are falling.
Yeah, giants. That's a great way of saying it.
And and not to speak,
we're not here to
trash anybody, but it's just, and also too, we're seeing an older generation not finish well. Either morally or they go soft woke.
I think about that a lot.
They don't finish well. And it was COVID, BLM, and the election.
Yep.
All of a sudden you're seeing these guys and you're like, okay, they have failure of nerve, they lack spine, and or when fully pushed, they're soft woke.
Yeah.
And it's concerning. I mean, I'm 54, so I'm somewhere between the young guys and the old guys. I'm more toward the old guys line, but it's like, man, run your race, finish your race. It's like, gosh, it's really concerning. And I think for younger pastors in particular, I think they're asking who's going to stay in the fight, who's going to finish well, and who's going to not veer off course when we need them.
What are some things that you do on a regular basis to ensure that you're finishing well, that you're staying the course, that you're not, compromising or falling into, some sort of, temptation, sin, and all those sorts of things? How have you kind of built that framework and that spiritual ethic, to be able to navigate that?
Well, I think for every pastor, that's the issue, is don't trip over your own 2 feet, And so for me, I think it starts with a genuine fear of God. It's like, if you work for God, if you speak for God, you better fear God. And then when I was a younger man, I traveled a lot. I don't travel really much at all for ministry anymore. I've got grandkids. So I'm like, I'm not getting on an airplane. I'm bop. I've actually got boogers right here in my hat, literally, because the boys keep picking their nose and taking my hat off. And so that's what I'm doing. And so when I was younger, though, I always had a male assistant.
Yeah.
And anytime I would travel, they would travel with me, and I didn't stay alone. I have all my social media monitored, so there's no DMs. I just hang out with my wife a lot. I really like her, and I hang out with my kids and my grandkids. So for me, it's just very simple. Just stay very close to your family, stay very close to Jesus, and don't be chasing shiny objects.
So simple, but is missed so often by so many people, right? Let me transition a little bit, because I think this is like the next layer of that is, okay, that's how you spiritually keep yourself, in a strong place. And then we're also responsible for the, people in our congregation. Yeah. I was really impressed by the number of men at your church. And to me, like, I felt like all of them could have beat me up. Like, that's what I felt. Like, you got some real guys there, just manly men that have showed up. They're bringing their families. And, that's a demographic that so many people are struggling to reach. What's been your intentionality and kind of approaching that, and sort of the strategy, for lack of a better term, that you've gone into that with?
Yeah, for me, it's just a deep conviction and passion. So for me, I'm a dad now, and I'm a grandpa. So I've got either sons or son-in-law that are 19 to 27. And so, they're getting married, they're starting families, they're making babies, they're buying homes. And so I'm in that dad coach slot, and I love it. And then I've got grandsons now, and one granddaughter. And so for me, what we're seeing politically is quite fascinating. And Gallup says, for the first time, I think in 50 years, young men are trending conservative. Mm-hmm. And a lot of that is the work of TPUSA and Charlie and all of that. And I'm very encouraged and grateful. But they're not Christians yet. There's a difference between being a conservative and being a Christian. Being a conservative is, I know my gender, and I would like to keep all of the parts that God gave me, but that doesn't make you a Christian. And so who's going to take those guys and introduce them to Jesus, tell them about the Father heart of God, what it means to be a Christian man with a biblical worldview? And that's where I feel like the church has a massive opportunity, and it really excites me, because I like being in that father's kind of slot and having a father's heart. So for us, the biggest ministry at our church is real men. Our men's ministry is bigger than our women's ministry. It's bigger than our kids' ministry. And if I had room, it would be twice the size. And so we meet every Tuesday night. It's just a men's Bible study. There's worship. I teach a practical lesson for men. They huddle around tables with a table lead, and every man gets prayed for every week, and they do business together. They go hunting and fishing together. They do firearms and combat training together. Literally, it's kind of a military vibe with the guys. But I've got 300 parking stalls and up to 700 men.
Wow!
And so they're walking, half a mile to come, and I need space for far more men. And then we simulcast. And that goes out to hundreds of thousands of men, maybe 1 million men a week, meeting in groups in churches and homes all over the world. So there's a massive need. And the church lost the men with the world wars. The young men went off to war. Older men, soft men, women and children stayed home. When the men came home from combat, they didn't have the brotherhood that they were used to. They didn't have a mission to be on, and they didn't have a strong leader that they were used to. While they were gone, the older men and the soft men created a church that was very welcoming to women and children. And when the men came back from war, everything's taupe. The octave in the worship band is not that great, and the men didn't come back. And so literally we've lost men in church since we sent men to war. And so my goal is, how do we create a church that is masculine but doesn't cause women and children to feel unsafe or unwelcome?
So how have you navigated that? What does that look like practically with your team? I think that this is the good stuff. I think pastors are out there taking notes on when they hear this. What does that look like for you guys?
Means for me, I love the men. They know that I have deep affection for them, and I tell them every week, I'm here because you matter, your marriage matters, your kids matter, your business matters, your legacy matters. And so I want the men to know, and they know from my heart, it's very genuine, they are my first and highest priority. Mm-hmm. And so for all the senior pastors that are listening, men's ministry doesn't work unless you own it.
Yeah.
If you show up, the men think they matter. If you delegate it to some guy who does a pancake breakfast once a quarter, they don't feel like they're important. And so, yeah, for me, like, guys can watch a clip or a reel. They can come to real men. I'm standing in the back. They can come say hi. I'll pray with them. I'll hug them. I'll pray over them. Like I'm there. I'm on the ground. I'm with the guys. And to me, it's really, really exciting seeing young men get activated, get free of addictions, get married, start a company, start a family. I mean, honestly, that's the only hope for the whole country.
One of the things I like about this, and that I feel like I've seen, from you, is that it's not about pushing women down. It's about raising men up. And I think that is, I think that's refreshing to both sexes in many ways. And I think that that's something that really resonates on both sides. I think we've probably seen that done poorly, and maybe with more, legalism and different things that approach on that. But when I was there with you, it was right before the election, and Charlie, was on the stage for a little bit. You had your wife up there with you,
sure.
And I think that's, to me, I know we got people from all different backgrounds that watch our show. There's different theological approaches, but to me, it felt refreshing, and I think that that's something that I think that families as a whole can get excited about when they see men thrive and kind of embrace their spiritual identity.
Yeah, we say we build men up to bless women and children. And so just strong men is not good. Cartels have strong men.
Right.
But if women and children, starting with your wife and kids, are blessed, then we're going the right direction.
Yeah. If you're like most churches today, giving isn't just happening in the offering plate anymore. It's happening online, in apps, and even at kiosks in the lobby. And that's where SecureGive comes in. They've been a trusted partner to ministries for nearly 2 decades, helping churches of every size simplify and strengthen their giving experience. Whether you're a small church plant just getting started or a growing church looking for a better solution, SecureGive has the tools you need. They make it easy for people to give faithfully and securely anytime, anywhere. So if you're ready to level up your digital giving, head to securegive.com/turningpoint. And don't forget to use promo code TurningPoint to get your first month completely free. Again, that's securegive.com/turningpoint. This episode is brought to you by Wildflower Coffee Company, specialty coffee brand founded by a Christian husband and wife team, the husband having proudly served in the U.S. military. Wildflower is committed to quality. All of their coffee is organic, roasted to order, direct trade, free from mold and mycotoxins, all made right here in the USA. They've just launched Mind Glow, a new mushroom latte mix that blends the energy boost of coffee with the adaptogenic power of 6 different mushrooms, ashwagandha, and the comfort of cacao. It contains no artificial flavors, binders, fillers, or gums, just clean, functional ingredients designed to support gut health, sharpen your focus, and help fight brain fog. Just add steamed milk and honey, and you're good to go. Head to wildflowercoffeecompany.com and use code STRONGCHURCH at checkout for 10% off your first coffee order. Again, that's wildflowercoffeecompany.com, and the code is STRONGCHURCH for 10% off. If you were maybe talking to a pastor out there that's going, man, I want to get guys engaged in my church. I want to capture some of that energy. I believe in these things. I just haven't known how to do it. Where would you maybe tell them to start with something like a men's ministry?
Honestly, I always say senior pastor needs to own it, first and foremost. And if you are a senior pastor that wants to get started on men's ministry, you can come hang with us.
Yeah.
We bring in senior pastors all the time, meet with a guy who architects and runs and leads the team, and come see what we're doing and go home and do it yourself.
I want to transition a little bit. One of the things within TPUSA Faith that is it's one of the great joys of my job. It's also one of the challenging aspects of my job is trying to bring pastors together from different camps.
Yep.
We've both been around long enough to know that sometimes that's challenging. And pastors, It's like herding cats at times because, secondary beliefs and tertiary beliefs become so, they can become so divisive, in our relationships. Can you talk to that at all? I mean, you've been around, you've seen some of the different, whether it's charismatic, versus cessationism or, reform versus, free will guys. Like, how do you navigate that relationally to ensure that kind of kingdom is first and that Christ is glorified, in our unity and togetherness, and not and maybe work around some of those pitfalls that are there?
Yeah, I've always distinguished between, I call them closed-handed issues and open-handed issues. You need to believe this to be a faithful Christian. Faithful Christians, we have differing opinions on these. Every group has an argument of what goes in what hand. But I think that younger pastors are doing better.
Yeah.
I think if you were trained, if you went to seminary or Bible college 30 years ago, then, you were taught that these are the lines, and those lines have shifted. It used to be, do you speak in tongues or not speak in tongues? Are you traditional or contemporary? Do you sprinkle? Do you dunk? And now it's like two dudes walk into your church and want to get married. Do you officiate it or not?
Right. Yeah.
And so the issues have really shifted, and now they're more public.
Yep.
Whether you speak in tongues or not, that's not as public an issue. If you fly a rainbow flag, it's public.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
And so, what has happened is I think that the culture has gone so far to the left and done so quickly that for most of us, it's like the issues we used to fight for are not worth fighting for. And so maybe what we were fighting for previously was our space within the church market, and now we're defending the gospel of Jesus Christ. That's a different battle.
Let me ask you this. I mean, I think that many people would perceive you as a very strong figure. You're probably the epitome in the Christian world of the alpha male, and I mean that in all the good ways. But yet in the time that I've had with you, I also see a lot of humility. How do you balance kind of that? Because this goes into those secondary and primary issues. Like, how do you balance the confidence of knowing what I teach is right, and this is God, I'm here, God's put me in this position, and then also have the humility to be able to still learn and still, connect with people that might have those differences?
Well, I don't know if I'm humble. I mean, I would never put that on my LinkedIn page, but I think you have enough head-on collisions in life that you become more grateful for your opportunities. And, and for me, honestly, every week I go up into the mountains, I turn off my phone, and I just hike and I pray and I listen a lot. And I feel like if you're going to talk, you need to listen well. And then I just hang out with my family. And so for me, locally, I'm a father and a grandfather and a husband and a pastor. And I've got my family and I've got my flock. And I love both very, very dearly. And the people that God has given me as my immediate and extended family, they're wonderful. I've got a beautiful, wonderful family. And then the flock that God has given me are the most dear, generous, resilient, joyful, teachable people I've ever met. I don't think that I would be a pastor if I wasn't their pastor. What I do at Real Faith Ministries, that's online. That's the set stuff on fire. It's a giant hammer to go pound the nails, but that's not where I live. That's not my life.
Yeah.
So I don't have endorsements. We're talking about, I don't have an agent. I don't have a publisher. I don't really travel. Nobody speaks into anything. Nobody controls anything. I can't get canceled. Like, I just kind of do my thing with my family and my flock. And if other people online are blessed by that or benefited by that, that's great. And if not, that's fine too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very counter to probably the experience that so many people have today, that glued to their phones, and especially as you got the sponsors, you develop a fan base and everything else, and this brought to you by this and this brought to you by this, and obviously I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I'm not judging any of it.
I don't hear any of that.
No,
but
just not me.
Yeah, but
I just want my freedom.
And I think that being able to kind of it's probably very conducive to that living for an audience of one and hearing the Holy Spirit, because sometimes the Holy Spirit can get I think that there's so much noise in our life that it becomes difficult to hear. Is this pressure there? Is it this pressure from this group? Or is it really what God's saying right now? And, even just the time, I live in, part of the year in Phoenix, and really part of the month in Phoenix, and part of the month, back in the Midwest. I came from 11 degrees back in, South Bend to 75 degrees here. And, this weekend, my wife and I, we just went out and we just did a long hike, and just got, we got dressed for the snow and just went at it, just had a blast just going out there. And, in that climate, sometimes you don't feel like going out and doing that as much, but it was so refreshing for both of us. Yeah. And it was like, we just felt alive when we got home, and I think that taking the time to really make sure that listening component that you're bringing up, I think is so, so important. So
one, for the average pastor, over them is usually a board.
Yeah.
And then over them is either a network or a denomination. and there's donors that have opinions, and then there's disgruntled people in the church that are causing problems, and then there's hurting people that are making demands. And so even beyond the complexity of somebody with a platform, just the average pastor, there's constant relational noise in their head, and there's constant pressure to push them in their decision making. And so, the average pastor, the people have almost unmitigated access to them, and it's really hard to hear God when everybody's yelling in your ear and your phone is buzzing.
Yeah,
it's really hard. And I think that is a lost art. Is if you're going to speak, you better listen. If you're going to make a decision, you better listen. And if you're going to maintain your sense of identity and center, you better listen.
How much has your worldview or even political involvement or engagement, has that ramped up since COVID, or were you always kind of strong in that area and really believed in being outspoken, in the public square sense of it? Or was that something that COVID inspired to maybe get more engaged?
For me, I've always been a Bible teacher. I preach through books of the Bible. I'm in Hebrews right now. And what I've seen happen is, let's say that there's the lane of the state and the lane of the church. And I do believe in the two kingdoms. I think that's a crucial component of Christian belief. Jesus says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, render unto the Lord what is the Lord's. So there's the two kingdoms. But the problem becomes when the government doesn't believe in God, it starts to behave as if it were God. It wants to be all-knowing, all-present, all-powerful, all-consuming, all-owning. And in recent years, if you're a pastor and you're like, well, I'm just staying in my, church lane. It's like, they say you need to close your church. Well, now they're in your lane. They say that, they're going to mutilate your children. Okay, now you're in my lane.
Yeah.
Hey, they're going to redefine marriage. Hey, you're in my lane. They're saying that if you're white, you're automatically racist. And if you're in America, you should be ashamed of your heritage. And that the way that God made you and the time and place that God put you was evil. Okay, now you're in my lane. And so as the government gets in the church lane, it gets a lot harder for the church to ignore the head-on collision with the government. And it's like, we need to get you out of my freaking lane,
Yeah.
And in recent years, that's been the issue.
Yeah.
And you even see it with the weaponizing of the Department of Justice going after faith-based organizations, Catholic groups, pro-life groups. Okay, the government's not just letting us worship our God.
And then paying other Christian organizations to speak poorly about conservative ideas and everything else.
Looking at the corruption in U.S. aid.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so progressives are funding Christians to have enough credibility to convince other Christians to undermine Christ.
Yeah.
And that is 30 pieces of freaking silver.
Yeah.
And my whole thing, and this would be my encouragement to pastors, don't worry about winning. Don't worry about approval ratings. Don't worry about success. Don't worry about legacy. Worry about anointing. Just stay under God's hand of provision, protection, presence, and blessing. And just, okay, God, what is right? And for me, I don't care about losing my platform. I don't care about, being canceled. I've already got my dance card. To me, it's like, as long as you're anointed, you've got a future.
Yeah.
And the opposite or the counterfeit of anointing is the approval of man. And it's a demonic counterfeit. It's like, well, who's approving of me? It's like, well, if he anoints you, you're going to be okay. And if he doesn't, eventually you're a dead man.
So good. I hope you're enjoying this riveting conversation with my guest today. We're going to continue that on the next episode, so make sure and stick around. Until then, my name is Lucas Miles. You're watching Strong Church. Stay strong.